as of now, Pornhub specifically is not allowed in 8 states. So it's Texas, Utah, Mississippi, Virginia, Louisiana, Arkansas, Montana, and North Carolina, which to me is kind of silly because with a VPN, it's an easy workaround. And then we're also only targeting these really big mainstream adult companies. And what's there's a lot of edges to this. So one is those, like it or not, are the safer companies out of all of the companies. If you go to like these small dodgy ones that are, a lot of them are in Florida, a lot of them are in like these small towns, they are wildly more dangerous, unsafe, and not following protocol, paperwork, legislation, all of that. So you're actually punishing what is mostly the better actors of the group. And then you're kind of like you're forcing a lot of that underground. So it's like you're putting the spotlight on not necessarily where I think the most change could happen by doing that. And then I think it's also a false sense of protection when it comes to minors that are consuming content that is not for them, because you think now that it's banned in your state, well, now my kid's safe, I can give them this device. It's not. They're going to outwit you every single turn that they can because they're younger and they're more privy to technology. So I don't see that as like as doing anything, honestly. It's like parents should have the responsibility to know what your kids are doing online. You can install apps. Don't give them devices that they're not ready to handle. And I think that's where it ends. Like I'm team like small government, the less
Yeah,
regulation, the better.
less regulation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely this huge debate around that user side of things, and for my part and the work that we do at the Justice Defense Fund, we're solely, advocating for, and our work is around, and Trafficking Hub as well, is
Mhm.
around those who are in the videos
Mhm.
that are being consumed versus those who are using it.
Mhm.
And I know there's many different mechanisms for protecting kids from viewing it.
Mhm.
And lots of debate. I mean, there's currently, they're going to the Supreme Court to even find out, is it constitutional to have these particular protections in place for users.
Right.
So I don't know. I don't know what the best way to protect kids from viewing necessarily is, because there's layers of protection. There's also, a lot of people say it's only on the parents, but then I also think about kids that don't have available, or parents who are just so busy putting food on the table, they don't have time to be monitoring their kids' use, or kids in foster care, like vulnerable kids who may not have that oversight. And so I guess, yeah, it's an important conversation. And like, I'm so open to hearing all of the different ways. I know people talk about device level verification for users.
Get
I
your
know
kid
there's
a
things.
flip phone. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
yeah, I challenge that. No parent is too busy, and if you're in a bad socioeconomic stance, then why does your kid have an iPhone? You know what I mean? And then
Yeah.
another interesting statistic, it's over 80% of children that first watch a piece of explicit content, it's actually not on a porn site. So
Mhm.
it's on a social media platform. So
Yeah.
again, like when we have things that kind of come in as the solution to a problem, and I very much think it's a problem. I do not think that kids should be watching this, like, to make that obviously clear if it's
Mhm.
not. But when you focus on the problem that is supercharged, because pornography is supercharged for a lot of people, it's still very taboo, and you're like, well, this is the bad guy, it's only Pornhub, right? Well, we're not looking at the other places that are actually the real danger for children. So I pulled up numbers for 2020 just because a lot of those were inflated because people were stuck at home for so long. So while I obviously am on board with making sure that content that is uploaded is consenting adults, I think that is very important. I don't think you should ever have a site where you're putting explicit content and there's no requirements. That doesn't seem logical. But Facebook alone, and this is what they reported, so this is probably a much smaller number than what is actually on the site, was 21.4 million cases of child exploitation content. Instagram was 1.4 instances. TikTok was actually super low at 22,000, and Pornhub was 13,000. So when you look at this and you're like, okay, well, Pornhub is the problem, we're talking 13,000 people compared, or cases versus 21 million. So
Yeah.
I guess what's why
Mhm.
is Facebook
Yeah.
also
I
being
mean,
held
I think that,
accountable?
look, all of these platforms that are enabling or distributing this content need to be held fully accountable to the full extent of the law, 100%. You know, I, the genesis of Trafficking Hub was a discovery
Mhm,
of the problematic nature and the complicity of Pornhub and its owners and what was going on. And I think one of the things that we uncovered in this investigation and kind of this movement of kind of peeling back the onion layer specifically on Pornhub was they went for over 13 years not reporting any instances, not a single instance of child sexual abuse material that they were aware of. So there was a Canadian parliamentary hearing where, under oath, the leaders of the child protection agencies in Canada and the United States that would be the clearinghouses for this content where they would be reporting, they testified that Pornhub hadn't made a single report to them since its genesis until after everything started to go viral in 2020.
mm,
And they were actually, hiding child sexual abuse material that they were aware of from authorities for over 13 years. And, for me, I think of, well, if they were reporting, and it's actually illegal. So in Canada, there's mandatory reporting laws
mhm,
for companies that know about child sexual abuse material, and there's actually criminal penalties, including up to 5 years in jail for not reporting. And
mhm,
they weren't reporting. And even here, we have laws about mandatory reporting. And
mhm,
I think about, you know, how many children could have been rescued out of situations of abuse if they had been doing what they were supposed to do. So, as far as numbers go, I don't think we really know the scope of the child sexual abuse, but also the non-consent piece of it, where,
mhm,
it might have been consensually recorded, but also uploaded non-consensually, and adult rape, trafficking, and all of that was also proliferating on the site. But I would never make excuses for any other company, including Twitter, who,
mhm,
distributes unverified content. I think, my hope is through this effort to hold Pornhub accountable, that we cause a ripple effect that impacts all internet websites, that, causes safeguards, that causes accountability, and for them to care more about what is being distributed on their sites. And so my hope is that, we'll see not only Pornhub changed and held accountable, but we'll see all the other sites as well. And so we'll make the internet itself a safer place, is the goal at the end of the day.
mhm. So, as far as, the non-reporting goes, is there a way to know that they were aware of the content that was there prior?
Yes, yes, they were aware because there's so many instances and evidence of even victims who were reaching out, emails that they were begging for those videos to be taken down, and they were ignored by police. They were ignored by victims in, many cases where victims were saying over and over again that they would be hassled for, proving that they were a victim in the video. So, they weren't requiring an ID and proof of consent to upload the content, but then when a victim would be begging to take it down, they would be hassled to prove that this is you, prove that it's non-consent, prove that you're underage in the video. And, in the meantime, 5 million users an hour had the opportunity to be able to download that content, because they actually had placed a download button on every single video.
Mhm,
And moderators from the company came forward, and I said, well, why would they have a download button on the content? And they said it was because the business model was that they just needed more and more and more content to be able to drive traffic to the site to sell 4.6 billion ad impressions on the site every day. So the more content they had, the better. And it didn't really matter that much what's in the content. It's just they needed URLs and tags and titles to be picked up in Google to drive traffic to the site. And so they wanted people to download and make compilations and re-upload as long as it had a different title, as long as it had different tags. Like, that was what was important. So
mhm,
they even had a download button to be able to kind of recirculate that content. And for victims, it was became a perpetual nightmare of just trying to get that content down, and then it would get put back up, and then trying to get it down again. And this was the nightmare for so many victims who came forward.